I can promise you that this is going to be a tier list like no other. We are not here to go and judge which character is going to be either an S tier or F tier or anywhere in between. No. This is going to be something completely different. We're not here to go and listen to my opinion about which ones I think are either the best or the worst. We are here to learn about the characters themselves. This is going to be a list in which right afterwards, we are going to learn so much about who these characters are. The ones that will truly stand out about one component, about one thing that is a very common part in our regular lives. Which Muppet is most likely to say f? And this is exactly the list that I have over here. Now, my good friend Ryan actually helped me out to go and create this list where he included a bunch of Muppets, like as many that he could think of that appeared across all the different Muppet shows and some of the movies and all that kind of stuff. Not all of them are in this list, just warning you, but there is a very significant amount of them, and I can guarantee you all the recognizable Muppets are right here. And what we are going to do is that we are going to be determining which ones are most likely or least likely to go and drop the F-bomb. And considering that we have a massive bunch over here, like the Muppets say themselves, I think it is time to get things started. And we are going to go and begin with who I believe are the 4 main Muppets. The first 4 Muppets that you think of when, well, the Muppets are brought up in any form of subject. And we will go and begin with the head honcho of all the Muppets, the icon himself, Kermit the Frog. Now, the funny thing with Kermit is that I know this is one that many people would think that there is no way that Kermit would go and say the F word. He would be the kind of person who would least likely to do so. And I would say kind of, but not necessarily. Because the thing with Kermit is that you got to keep in mind is that he is the leader of the Muppets in a sense. This is the guy who's kind of like leading the troop of all these crazy people, of all like these dogs and bears and cats and chickens and all these whatnots and whatever. And the thing is that they will commonly cause chaos, and in a way, that's Kermit's main job, to go and maintain order amongst all the chaos. And there have been several occasions that you would see, especially in the Muppet Show, in which Kermit will snap and that sometimes the chaos can be way too much for him. So I think Kermit is absolutely the kind that would go and actually drop a few F-bombs here and there when things get a little too out of control. Now, normally, Kermit would never go and actually say the F word, but he's definitely the kind that you kind of have to push him to go and actually say it. And when he would hang out with the Muppets, I'm sure that has happened on several occasions. So when it comes to Kermit, I think honestly, I'm not going to go and put him right at the top, but I would say he would be right over here. Has sworn off of saying F, but said it at some points. I think that really does describe Kermit perfectly. Now, the next one that we have is Miss Piggy, Muppets' very own diva. And honestly, I'll just say right now, out of all the Muppets in the entire history of the franchise, I think Miss Piggy is the one that would most likely drop the F-bomb. And not just like on rare occasions, I think like legit regularly, that's always part of her vocabulary. I'll even say that if there ever is an occasion that I would come face to face with Miss Piggy, you know, like just to hang out with her, and then suddenly she would be swearing like a sailor, honestly, I would not be surprised whatsoever. I would not flinch. I would not be shocked. I would just feel like, yeah, that's just who Miss Piggy is, because she is the kind of diva that on camera she is seen as like so sweet, as like Little Miss Perfect, just like being so in love with all the fame and the glory and her fans and stuff like that. But then off camera, she would just be absolutely nasty. And we've seen tons of evidence of that because that's just who Miss Piggy is. She is the definitive diva. So Miss Piggy immediately, where the fridge is she? Yeah, like she has to go like right at the top. Like honestly, it fits her perfectly. She's on the top of the list. She is the first amongst everyone, and in this case, it's to regularly drop the F-bomb. That definitely describes Miss Piggy perfectly. Now, the next one that we have is Fozzie Bear. And honestly, I would say Fozzie is the opposite of Miss Piggy, where Miss Piggy, you would expect that she would swear like a sailor. With Fozzie, on the other hand, I don't think so. Like, it's hard to really imagine Fozzie to actually go out there and actually swear. And the thing with Fozzie is that he actually has this very sweet personality, you know, someone like who really is passionate about what he does. In a way, he shares Kermit's passion in entertaining people, in making them smile and making them laugh. And despite the fact that he's not as successful in doing it, you know, he still has that innocence and that high spirit that kind of prevents him from saying the F word. I don't think I would put him right at the bottom where he legally cannot say it, because I think Fozzie must have heard the F word before. Like in some of his failed acts, like there must have been some angry audiences who dropped the F-bomb on him and stuff like that. But honestly, it's just impossible for me to really think of a scenario where Fozzie would actually say it. And that's ironic because with Fozzie Bear, he has every right to go and drop the F-bomb. When things don't go like his way in terms of many of his performances, it's easy to imagine that Fozzie would be in a scenario where the pressure would be put onto him so much and like all the backlash that he would get that inevitably he would snap and just drop the F-bomb. But Fozzie is not the kind who would go and snap, and he never has. So honestly, I just don't think he really would. Like, he is aware of the word, but he would never go and say it. So honestly, I would just put him over here and has not said F before and refuses to say it. So, you know, Fozzie is a good bear, and I think he would be on that spot right there. And then finally, in terms of the big main Muppets, there is Gonzo the Great, or the Great Gonzo. And with that one, I would say it's kind of an interesting case because, honestly, I think in terms of Gonzo himself, he wouldn't actually go and drop the F-bomb. I don't think that he would be the kind that would swear like a sailor, despite the fact that apparently behind the scenes when making the Muppet Show, Dave Goelz would just have Gonzo just swearing all the time when the cameras are off or after the director would say cut. But when it comes to Gonzo himself, and especially nowadays, it's just hard to really imagine Gonzo would be the kind to go and actually regularly swear. The most that I can imagine that he would actually say the F word would be when he would go and do his crazy stunts. You know, when he has like full of adrenaline on him, when he's like shot out of a catapult, where he would land on a giant bowl of oatmeal while playing the violin, you know, like just playing some renditions of Legend of Zelda music. I think at that point, like when the rush is really on him, that's when he would go and drop the F-bomb. But outside of that, I just feel like it's a bit unusual if Gonzo would go and say that. I think, honestly, it would be more shocking to hear Gonzo say the F word more so than Kermit would say the F word. So, honestly, I would put Gonzo right in the middle. Like, has not said F before, but can so if desired. All right, so now that we do have the main Muppets out of the way, it is now time that we are going to go into the rest of the cast over here, the rest of the crew that we have on this entire list. So let's get right into them because we got a lot of interesting ones. And we are going to be going in alphabetical order, by the way. And the first one that we have is Andy and Randy, Miss Piggy's nephews. And in case you don't know Andy and Randy, one thing that you have to know about them is that they, you know, I don't think they would say the F word, but they are dumb as F. And that's pretty much their main thing, is that they are stupid beyond belief. And honestly, I don't really imagine that they would go and actually say the F word, but I think considering that they would hang out with the Muppet who would say the F word the most, Miss Piggy, they would be highly aware of the F word, and they would go and drop the F-bomb, not because of like the regular reasons, but because they just don't know any better. It's just a word that they've learned from their Aunt Piggy, and then they would be scolded by it, but then they would immediately forget afterwards, and then like the cycle would go and continue. So honestly, I would say that they would be right in the middle, that they would never, like normally they would never say it, but if they would hear it, then yeah, they would just go and regularly use it because they're just completely dumb and they have no idea about what they are doing. All right, now the next one that we have is Angel Marie. And I'm just gonna say right now that when it comes to pirates, I think for them, they are automatically right at the top. So I'm just gonna go immediately right over here. Like, I know Angel Marie is one of the dumber pirates, but I can imagine that is Angel Marie a guy or a girl? Hold on. By the way, I forgot to mention, I actually have an entire encyclopedia of almost all the Muppet characters. So let me just go and double check on the gender of Angel Marie. I just don't want to go and misgender people. So let's see now. Prepare. Oh, okay. Angel Marie is a guy. Oh, okay. I gotcha. So yeah, anyways, Angel Marie is a pirate. So as pirates are, I think, yeah, they would immediately go at the top. All right, next up on the list is Angus McGonagall, the angry gargoyle who gargles Gershwin gorgeously. I am that big of a Muppet fan. Don't ask how is it that I know that. Now, the thing with Angus McGonagall, like, he doesn't appear very often. Like, his biggest appearance is actually on the Star Wars episode of the Muppet Show where Mark Hamill, C-3PO, R2-D2, and Chewbacca made their appearance. And the thing is that you really have to know about him is that, well, he is an angry Scottish gargoyle. So honestly, it's hard to truly determine because of the fact that he doesn't appear that much amongst the Muppets. I feel like it's hard to truly know if he would actually swear crazily, but it's not hard to imagine if he would. So honestly, I think I would put him like that he might have said it at some point. I don't know if he would regularly said it, but to play it safe, I'm just going to put him over here. Okay, the next one that we have here is Animal. And I think right next to Miss Piggy, Animal would definitely be the kind who would regularly drop the F-bomb. In fact, here's an actual fun fact about Animal, because out of all the Muppets, Animal is canonly the most sex crazed. And this is actually confirmed by his original puppeteer, Frank Oz, where Animal literally is the kind that he is just so wild about drugs, sex, and rock and roll. And there actually have been some evidence that Animal can be, well, no pun intended, an animal in bed.
Yeah, too many women, too many towns.
So in that regard, I think it is easy to imagine Animal, like, once he drops the F-bomb, he'll drop it everywhere. Like, it's not just one bomb, it's just a massive nuke all over the place where Animal would just be, like, swearing like crazy. Like, once the word is in his head, it's hard for him to stop saying it. So yeah, Animal would definitely be right up there. All right, the next one that we have is Annie Sue. And Annie Sue, I think it is safe to say that she's pretty much a counterfeit version of Miss Piggy. Like, she is the squeaky clean version of Miss Piggy, who is like a lot more easy for producers to go and handle. That she would be the kind that, like, you tell her to do something in the scene and she'll be all innocent and sweet. Like, you know the personality that Miss Piggy puts on in front of the camera? She's like that on camera and off camera as well, which honestly makes her a far less interesting character than Miss Piggy. So honestly, I would just put her right over here, like almost at the bottom. Like maybe she has heard of the word before, but she would definitely not be the kind who would go and actually say it. All right, the next one that we have on our list is Beaker. And I think that's an easy one because Beaker legally cannot say the F word because Beaker cannot say words. Beaker literally just meeps. That's it. I like, even if Beaker would want to say it, he cannot physically say it because it would just come off as a meep. Although I will say there may have been one instance where maybe Beaker has said it, because I know some people would say that's not the case, but I could have sworn in Muppets Christmas Carol there was a moment where both Bunsen Honeydew and Beaker got mad at Scrooge and Beaker legit flips the bird at him.
All right, Beaker, come along. I think we've taken enough of Mr. Scrooge's time. Oh.
Again, maybe I'm wrong, but it definitely does seem like it. And I mean, if that actually is the case that Beaker would go and do so, you would not blame him because it's Scrooge. And at the beginning of the film, Scrooge is an absolute dick. All right, now the next one that we have over here is Bean Bunny. And considering that Bean Bunny is supposed to be the embodiment of cuteness, saying the F word is not cute. You know, I think like Bean Bunny actually has like some kind of like guideline or some kind of rule book about what to do and what not to do in order to be cute. And like, even if he would be angry and stuff like that, I don't think it's possible whatsoever for Bean Bunny to actually say the F word. So I'm going to put him right next to Beaker and just say that he legally cannot say it. And the next one that we have over here is Beauregard. And Beauregard is another stupid Muppet. You know, can be handy with some janitorial purposes, but yeah, just like Andy and Randy, the dude is as dumb as a brick. So honestly, he is the kind that if you say the F word at him, or if you hear Beauregard say it, you know, he just doesn't know any better. He's the kind that like he would say it, but he wouldn't actually know what it means. Even if he would say it properly, it's like, you know, even if like he would get mad and he would just say it, like he wouldn't know the word. He would just say like, well, I don't know. It's a thing that people say when they're mad. So I am mad, so I will say it. You know, he's like that kind. So I'm putting him right in the middle. Like, I think it's very fitting that he would be right next to the two brothers that have the same equivalent IQ as him. So definitely fitting right in the middle. And the next one that we have here is Big Mean Carl. And I think through his name alone, I think it's a clear indicator that Big Mean Carl would be right at the top. And considering that Big Mean Carl is a Muppet that literally eats anything on sight, if you don't want to be eaten or you manage to get away from his mouth, he would definitely be the kind that would just go and swear out of anger, and he would definitely drop some F-bombs. And I can imagine that might happen regularly. And even in terms of like his personality himself, yeah, he would definitely be the kind that would go and just like say that on occasion. So yeah, I would definitely put Big Mean Carl on top. Next up, we got the Bubble Boy. Hold on a sec. Does he actually have a name? Just want to be sure. Let's see. Oh, yes, right over here, Bill the Bubble Guy. So, Bill the Bubble Guy, apparently he's from Muppets Tonight, and he is a character that, not the ratings, but, the producers, the executives, they love the fact that he has a very squeaky clean act. You know, like, he's the kind that, executives are much more comfortable putting on the air because he's no trouble whatsoever. And in that regard, considering that he is like, you know, someone who's very like clean, someone who's supposed to be very polite, you know, someone who wouldn't go unhinged, I think like he'll just go right over here. That maybe he knows the word, but you're never going to hear that guy say it. You know, he's too clean of an act to go and actually drop an F-bomb. Oh, and next up we got similar characters. I'm trying to remember their names. Is it Gil, Jill, and Phil? Bill, I believe.
I'm Bill, and this is Gil. Phil, I'm Gil, and this is Jill.
Phil, I'm Jill. You know, Gil and Bill.
Like these are like the business Muppets from Muppets Take Manhattan, that when Kermit loses all of his memory, he would go and join those Muppets in order to go and promote their businesses and stuff. So in that regard, they're very much like Bill, where they are very squeaky clean in terms of their personalities, and I think they are the least likely to go and legitimately swear. So yeah, I think it's easy that they would go right over here. And next up that we have is Bobby Benson's Baby Band. And honestly, I feel like, okay, the babies, for sure, they wouldn't go and actually say it because they're babies. But when it comes to Bobby Benson himself, I can imagine he definitely was a guy whom once upon a time would easily go and swear like a sailor. But because he's with those babies, he's not, you know, he'll like be more responsible and he will not go and swear. Yeah, there will be elements where he's just not going to care. Like he will be smoking in front of the babies and stuff. But when it comes to actually swearing, I don't think so. I think like he cares about these babies enough where he will go and hold his tongue when it comes to language. So I would put, honestly, yeah, I think I'll put him over here. Like, yeah, he has said it. Or no, actually, you know what? No, actually, I know it sounds weird to put him on top, but it does describe him pretty well. Has sworn off saying F, but has said it as some points. You know, I like, he said it before the babies. I think that's the best way to describe him. All right, next up we got is Bobo. Personally, I believe he is one of the most underrated Muppets. I think Bobo is one of my favorite Muppets after the time of Jim Henson. But when it comes to Bobo, honestly, it's hard to really imagine he would be the kind of guy that would actually go and say the F word, because he's kind of like that cool uncle, you know, like he's the kind that, you know, like he would be mostly hanging out with the adults, but like even like if you would go and hang out with him, he would still be he would still be chill, he would still be really cool, and it would be hard to imagine that he would be the kind of guy that would actually say the F word. So I don't know, for me it's kind of awkward. Like I would put him like in the middle of like has not said it before but can so if desired, and has not said it before but refuses to say it. And that's the thing, it's just, it's hard to know, could Bobo actually say the F word? And just thinking about it, maybe there have been some times like either in Muppets Tonight or in the 2015 series where like he has been pushed to the limit where like he, you know, like some people may test him. So I think in that regard, I would say maybe. You know, I think, you know what, like the more I think about it, the more I can imagine some scenarios where he could go and legitimately say it. Like normally he wouldn't, but maybe there are times where he would. So I think I'll put him like right over here, like right in the middle. All right, next up we got is this fat rat. And I think it is safe to say that when it comes to any of the rats from the Muppets, they would easily be the kind that would go and swear like a sailor. Not because they're the angry type or anything like that. It's just part of who they are. They are the kind of Muppets in which it's just part of their personality. It's just part of their vocabulary. They'll just throw it. They'll just say it at ease, you know? It's the kind that it's like one of their go-to adjectives that they would use to describe whatever scenario, or like they would say it as like their go-to exclamation. So when it comes to this fat rat, yeah, definitely I would just put him right over here. Then we have Dr. Bunsen Honeydew. And honestly, I don't really think so. I can't really imagine Bunsen Honeydew being at the point where like he would go really unhinged, where he would be so mad that he would just swear like crazy. Because usually with his experiments, it's Beaker that would have the receiving end in case things don't naturally go as well as planned. You know, like at the most, you would have Dr. Bunsen Honeydew look at a scenario and he would just say, oh dear. So in that regard, I think I'm going to put him like pretty low on the list. Like he hasn't said it before. And I think honestly, he wouldn't really use it. He's just not the kind of guy that would say so. All right, next up we have is Camilla. Yes, this is going to be an interesting one. You know, it's funny when discussing about Camilla, because Camilla is just such an oddity in human existence. Like, this is the kind of individual that is just so vile. It's just so hated by the public, and most likely, like, so hated within their own family that it makes you wonder, how is it that there's anyone out there that could actually like someone who has a disgusting personality and is just, well, again, naturally so vile in every way. But we are not here to talk about the royal family. We are here to talk about Gonzo's girlfriend. And in this case, honestly, well, Camilla's a chicken. She cannot say anything. All she does is clucks. So in that regard, it's a lot like Beaker. Like, she literally cannot say it. She just, like, maybe like Gonzo can understand her if she would say that word, but naturally for everyone else, no. Like, she's right at the bottom where, like, she's a chicken. What the fridge else do you expect? Like, the most that she would say is just "bawk." That's it. Next up we have is this old man over here. Just out of curiosity, does the old man actually have a name? Let me double check on that. Oh, fudge, not even the encyclopedia has him. Okay, but the good news though is that I am familiar with this character. I do recognize him. Like, he actually appears in like a few sketches in Muppets Tonight, and the one thing that you need to know about him is that he's like this old butler. He's like this Alfred type of character. So in that regard, I don't think he is the kind that would swear, because he has that old people mindset where it's way too scandalous to actually say the word. So honestly, I'll just put him right at the bottom, that he would just refuse, you know, he would refuse to say it. Next up that we have, oh boy, we got a real interesting one. We got Chip. Okay, Chip honestly is a very weird case. I mean, like, you never know with Chip. Maybe he would be the kind that would say it, or maybe he would not. Like, the entire character himself is just like this entire enigma. It's just like one of those weirdos that you just cannot comprehend, and it's not really that appealing. So honestly, I have no idea. Like, maybe he would say it. Like, you know, just to play it safe, I'm just gonna put him right in the middle. Like, maybe he's the kind that would swear like a sailor. Maybe he's the kind that would refuse to say it. But honestly, I can imagine, like, most likely it's just right in the middle, that he never said it before, but like, he definitely would. So I'm just, again, I'm just playing it safe. All right, next step that we got here is Clifford. Yes, Clifford, I would say, is a pretty interesting case where I can imagine maybe he would go and say it. Like, you know, it's not impossible that he would go and drop some F-bombs before, or he would be the kind that would use it as part of his regular vocabulary. But I feel like there are other Muppets that are more likely to go and say the F-bomb before him. So in that regard, I think, honestly, I'm just gonna put him over here, that, like, maybe he has sworn off of saying it, and it is uncommon for him to say it, but it's not impossible for him to actually say the F word. Okay, next up we got Clueless Morgan, another dumb pirate, and considering that he is a dumb pirate, he would not be likely to say the F word as much as the other pirates, but he definitely would. So automatically goes right up there, no problem. Next up you got, oh, speaking of which, we got Constantine, not a pirate, but definitely a villain. And I think with this one, like, considering that he is one of the most villainous Muppets of the entire roster, I think, yeah, like, he would go and regularly say it, no problem, when he would go, especially if he would hang out with someone like Ricky Gervais, then absolutely, he would be the kind that would just regularly drop the F-bomb and not care about what anyone else thinks. So definitely right up there, no trouble at all. Okay, now the next batch that we have is going to be an interesting group because we got the Muppet version of some of the performers. Like the first one we have is the Muppet version of Jim Henson. And when it comes to Jim, considering that he is the human version of Kermit the Frog, you have to go and put him where Kermit is. Like, he's the kind that, yeah, he himself would never go and actually drop an F-bomb. But if you push him just enough, then yeah, he probably would. And considering the whole situation that he had to deal with at the end of his life with the whole Disney deal, yeah, he probably dropped a few F-bombs during that entire time, or even with people like Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg. So definitely would go right over here. In fact, you know, just to be fitting, I'm gonna put him right next to Kermit. There, that would make sense. Next up, we got the Muppet version of Jerry Nelson. Honestly, I'm not really as familiar with Jerry Nelson. I don't know if he would be the kind of guy that would regularly drop the F-bomb, but it would not be impossible for him to say it. So just to play it safe, I'm putting him right in the middle. Oh, and next up, we have the Muppet version of Frank Oz. And it is a fact that out of all the performers who've worked with Jim Henson, Frank is the one that would swear the most. In fact, if you have read the biography of Jim Henson by Brian J. Jones, like when you would see a quote from Frank Oz, more often than not, he would keep dropping an F-bomb. So honestly, yeah, he would immediately go up there. In fact, I'm gonna go and do like what I did with Jim Henson. Like, I'll just put him right next to Miss Piggy because it just fits perfectly. Next up, we have Crazy Harry. Ah, yes, the man who would go and literally drop bombs. And considering he is the kind of guy that would just drop bombs and make everything explode, I think it's not hard to imagine that he would definitely be the kind of guy that he would drop some F-bombs as well, considering that he would be that insane. So yeah, easily like right at the top also. Oh, God. And then the next one, debatably one of the most unappealing Muppets in this entire list. Frickin' Denise. Do you guys remember in the 2015 Muppets, like when Kermit had that one pig girlfriend after he broke up with Miss Piggy? Yeah, like, I don't know. There's just something about her that honestly, it's just, she is such a, like, she feels like a massive downgrade compared to Miss Piggy. It's like, I know, like, this might seem very harsh of me, but even in terms of her looks as well, like, I don't really remember much of her personality because she is that bland of a character, but even, like, with her physical appearance, it's just unappealing compared to Miss Piggy, like, especially with the little snout and those, like, weird giant eyes that are, like, too far apart from one another. It's just, like, you look at her and it's like, you know, you kind of feel sorry for Kermit that he would have to go and get, like, a dollar store pig compared to, like, the diamond that Miss Piggy was. So, yeah, I think it is safe to say that I'm definitely more of a Miss Piggy kind of guy compared to Denise. But in terms of the character, I have no idea. Like, maybe she would, like, I'll just put her in the middle. Like, maybe she never said it before, but, like, can so if desired. So, yeah, I think I'll just play it safe and just put that pig right there. All right, so the next up we have is Dog Lion. And this is one of the lesser known giant Muppets. And honestly, it's hard to really tell, considering that they don't often use him that much. And whenever you would actually see a scene with him, he doesn't actually talk. Like, he would have, like, this rubbled language, you know, like, he would just be there, like, ah, rah, 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 rah. And, like, there are moments where he can talk, usually, like, when he would sing in a musical number and stuff like that. And again, like, I know some people may argue that considering that he counts as a monster, he probably would regularly, but I don't know. I think like, yeah, he'll sing, but on his own, like with his, you know, like outside of the stage, I think like he would just have that rubbled language. So I'll put him at the bottom, honestly. And next up we have here is Dr. Julius Strange Pork. And honestly, considering that he would be with the Swine Trek crew, I can imagine maybe there are some scenarios where he would, but I would argue that considering his age, I think he would be less likely to go and legitimately do so. And even though that he could be smart on some aspects, there are times when, or honestly, more often than not, Miss Piggy is the smartest one of the crew, and like he could be as dumb as as Link Hogthrob. So at that point, honestly, I don't think he would. I think he would have the old person mentality where he would feel very scandalized if someone would say it. So I'll just put him right over here. And next up, we have Dr. Van Neuter. This is one of the newer Muppets that appeared in Muppets Tonight that is supposed to be the mad scientist. And considering that he is a mad scientist, I think it is safe to say that he is more likely to drop the F-bomb more so than Dr. Bunsen Honeydew. So at that point, honestly, considering that he can have a short temper at times, I'll put him right at the top. I feel like, yeah, he would definitely regularly go and say the F word regularly. So I think that would make sense for him to be at the top. Oh, and then the next one we have over here is my boy, Dr. Teeth. And this is going to be an interesting case, and I think this will go with all the other members of the Electric Mayhem. And I feel like the entire group, while it may vary on how many times they would go and drop the F-bomb, they would go and say it on occasion. I don't think they would say it regularly, but it would not really be that surprising if any of them would go and actually say the F word, especially when it comes to Dr. Teeth. I think, like, yeah, maybe he is too cool to regularly go and say it, but honestly, it would not be impossible for him to say so, especially as a rocker. So at that point, I would put him over here, that he definitely has said it at some points. Next up that we have over here is, I'm surprised Ryan added him, Droop. Like, this is a lesser known Muppet. Like, he's often seen as like an extra and stuff like that. But often when he would show up, he would be like this depressed kind of Muppet. Especially there's this, like in one of the Muppet Show pilots, like he is often seen as like the most pessimistic and the most depressed of them all. So at that point, he seems like the kind that would just like not really care. And honestly, like, it would vary. Maybe he would be the kind that would be offended if anyone would say it, but if he himself would say it, then honestly, he would just, you know, it would not be impossible. So at that point, I would say, you know, just to play it safe, I would say maybe he has said it at some points. I think that would be, you know, I think that's in the realm of possibility. So I'm just going to put him right over here. All right, next up, we got Fozzie's Bear's mom. And one good thing I could say about Fozzie Bear is that he has a good mother. His mother, she did her job very well. The reason why Fozzie Bear is a good boy nowadays is all thanks to Ma. It's all thanks to Fozzie Bear's mother, and she would definitely be the kind of woman that would teach Fozzie Bear to never say the F word, and that is a mantra that she carries with herself. So honestly, she would go right over here. Like, this is the one that I would debatably say that I am the proudest to go and put on the list of, like, has never said it before and she never will, because she is a good mother. And that, honestly, I cannot say the same about the frickin' paparazzi guy. Like, he doesn't show up a lot in the Muppet universe, but when it comes to this guy, like, he's just a sleazy paparazzi guy who's just going around trying to get gossip out of people. So honestly, I can imagine he would be the kind of guy that would go and regularly say it. He's a sleazebag, so definitely would be at the top, who would go and just drop the F-bomb and not care. Next up, we got Floyd. And I would say with Floyd, well, the things that I've said about Dr. Teeth, I think the same would go and apply to Floyd. I think, honestly, he would definitely be the kind that would say it, but he would not say it as much as, like, Animal. In fact, like, I would say it's mostly during the situations where he would have to control Animal is when he would say it the most. So I would just put him over here, that he has definitely said it at some points. Oh, but next up, we got George the Janitor. Before Beauregard, we had George as the Muppets' very own janitor. And this is the kind of guy where, like, he's definitely smarter than Beauregard, but he is a lot more pessimistic. Like, this is the kind of guy who just doesn't care. Like, he kind of gave up on life, and he would absolutely be the kind of guy that would just regularly say the F word. So at that point, I'm putting him right over here. So yeah, already the F word list is starting to grow. We got a second layer going on. There's a lot more Muppets who would regularly drop the F-bomb than I expected, honestly. And I think we might have another one to go and add on the list. We have Gladys, the lunch lady. She appeared like in the middle of the Muppet Show, I would say, starting in season 3. She would be the kind of woman that honestly, it would not be impossible for her to say it. You know, I feel like honestly, she would regularly say the F word, but not as much as George. You know, I think that's the best way to go and put it. So I'm still going to put her right on top of the list, but she would not go and swear as much as either George or Miss Piggy or Animal. Next up, we're going to go back to the first season again. We got Helga, or is it Hilda or Helga? Hold on a sec. Let me see. Oh, here it is. Hilda. Okay, so that's who it is. It's actually Hilda, the wardrobe lady. And considering that she is an old woman, honestly, I don't really see her swearing all that much. And again, she would be like, considering she is an old person, she would be scandalized if you dropped the F-bomb at her. So definitely right at the bottom where she would refuse to say it. But next up, we got the hobos. And I mean, these are hobos. These are people who literally have nothing else in their lives. You know, like they lost everything. In fact, the F word is probably one of the very few things that they do own. So honestly, these are people who just don't care. They'll immediately be at the top where they will say the F word regularly. Okay. Howard Tubman. Now, the thing with Howard Tubman is that when you look at him, he seems like the kind that would just go and swear regularly. Like, he's the kind of pig that, like, yeah, you would expect that every 5th word that comes out of his mouth would be the F word. But in actuality, he's actually not. You know, he has a lot more of a sweeter personality. Like, he's the kind of person that, like, he cares about food, but he's not completely heartless, though. And even when he speaks, he has that kind of voice that you definitely would not expect out of a pig that looks like that.
I have terrible news.
Don't tell me we're out of gooseberries again. Carter, how many times do I have to tell you? Buy in bulk. If you're not buying in bulk,
No,
you're gonna
sir,
find
it's a telegram.
So honestly, I feel like it would not be impossible that he would go and swear, but honestly, like, nah, he regularly would not. So at that point, I'm just gonna put him over here, like right in the middle. I feel like that would go and make sense. Next up, oh, well, we got another Electric Mayhem member. We got Janice. And I think with Janice, honestly, I feel like I would go and put her a little bit under Dr. Teeth and Floyd. I feel like she would be less likely to say it because, you know, she's the most hippie of the group. She's all about peace and love. And I feel like it would be kind of rare for her to actually say it. Not impossible. There can be some scenarios where she would actually say it. But then again, I'm not going to go and disclose when specifically she would go and just scream out the F word. But I can guarantee you it's not out of her vocabulary and it's not out of rage. But I feel like, honestly, she would just be in the middle where, like, you would suspect she might have said it in the past for reasons I will not disclose, but honestly, herself, nah, she would be less likely than Dr. Teeth or Floyd to go and say it. Next up, we got Joe from Legal. And honestly, it's just too perfect, regardless of who the character is. And especially with Joe from Legal, considering like he is this very strict attorney, I feel like it's just too perfect to put him right at the bottom. You need, like, if we're gonna have a character who's literally called Joe from Legal, you have to put him on the spot where legal is literally in the title. I I'm sorry, it's just way too perfect there. Maybe you could discuss amongst yourselves if Joe from Legal would actually go and say the F word, but honestly, I just feel like it's just way too perfect for him to legally cannot say F. Oh, next up we got Johnny Fiamma, the crooner of the Muppets. And I feel like with his Italian-like Frank Sinatra personality, he probably has said it before, but honestly, he would be less likely than others where, yeah, he'll probably there'll probably be a few moments where you can imagine he'll go and immediately say it, but not as regularly as others, especially compared to his assistant, which we will get to later. So honestly, I think I'm gonna put him over here that probably has sworn off of saying it because he wants to maintain a cool image, but yeah, he would definitely go and say so. Oh, and then next up we got JP, the owner of the Muppet Theater, or at least during the Muppet Show. I could definitely imagine that he would, considering that he's supposed to be this rich tycoon, I think honestly he would definitely be the kind that would say so. Considering he's the type of tycoon that only cares about money. Yeah, he would regularly go and say it. I would definitely put him right at the top where he would regularly drop the F-bomb. Oh, but then we have New Zealand and his Boomerang Fish Act. Honestly, it's hard to imagine that he would. I don't think there, considering his his wild personality and stuff, I don't know if he would be the kind that would actually say the F word. I'm trying to imagine a scenario where New Zealand would go and actually say it, and I don't know, it just feels out of place. It just, it's tough to really determine. I can't really imagine with his Boomerang Fish Act and his silly personality that he would go and actually drop F-bombs. And in that regard, I don't know, honestly. Just to be safe, I think I'm just gonna put him in the middle. I think maybe he would say it, but I just don't really imagine that he would be the kind that would say it. If it were me, I would put him maybe somewhere in the middle, but if I would have to make a choice, I'll just put him right over here. And next up, we got Link Hogthrob, the himbo of the Muppets. And as a himbo, this guy is not really bright. He pretty much almost has the same mindset or the same intelligence as Andy and Randy and as Beauregard, where he just doesn't really know any better. Maybe there would be scenarios where maybe he would say it, but he would need some reminders of what that word means. So honestly, with the rest of the dumb Muppets, I'm just gonna put him right in the middle again. I feel like maybe it's not impossible for Link Hogthrob to say it, but then again, he would, he's just not smart enough to use it properly and stuff. Next up we got Lips, which other than Zoot, is one of the final Electric Mayhem members on our list. And with Zoot, well, I mean, we don't understand Zoot. He's one of those that has a kind of Dog Lion, this rubbled language that only a few can really understand. In fact, if you have recently seen Muppets Mayhem, then you know that Lips is one of those characters either Chewbacca or Group that only the band members and Moog actually understand him, but you certainly would not. Maybe he's the kind that would swear like a sailor, but let's be honest, you never know. So
yeah, I'm thinking that coming up with those others and it's just Cameron.
Yep.
In that regard, it's pretty much like Beaker and Camilla. I'll just put him right at the bottom. I think that's what I think that makes sense. Next up, we got the sportscaster, Louis Kazang, I believe that is his name. And considering that he would have to go and report these crazy out of the box sports events, and sometimes he would find himself right in the middle of it, I can imagine that, yeah, he would go and have some scenarios where he would swear like crazy. But I think in terms of the person himself, I don't think he really would. So in that regard, I think I would put him right over here. Like, he would not regularly swear, but he would on occasion, especially when things get out of hand during his job. Next up, we got the Jug Band. Yes, the Electric Mayhem is not the only band in the Muppets. They actually do have a jug band that would often play like country songs and stuff like that. And in that regard, honestly, I don't 100% know, but I'm just gonna go and put them in the middle. Like, honestly, maybe they would swear, but they're far less likely to swear than the Electric Mayhem. I think that makes sense. Oh, next up, we got Mad Monty. And, you know, the funny thing is, I feel like, other than Polly, which I'll get to later, but Mad Monty, I feel like he is the most likely to drop F-bombs amongst all the pirates. So I think it's easy to just immediately put him at the top. No problem right there. Oh, next up, we got Marvin Suggs and the Muppet-phones. Now, I'll say right now, the Muppet phones, I would say maybe, because like they would get constantly hit by Marvin. But I think the guy himself, yeah, he definitely would, because let's be honest, this might sound terrible, but the dude is the most abusive of all the Muppets. I mean, his act is literally just hitting a bunch of little creatures in order to make his music. And like when you would see the way that he would treat them, like he could be very mean. So at that point, honestly, yeah, he would go and regularly say it, no problem. Next up, we got the Mana Mana crew. And considering that there are only a few words that they could say, which is Mana Mana and do 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 do, at that point, they would just go and be right at the bottom. They legally cannot say it because the F word is not part of the lyrics of Mana Mana. Next up, we got Mildred. And even though she doesn't look as old as some of the senior Muppets, I feel like with her, she is a very pompous Muppet whom would be very scandalized. Like, she would be the kind that would immediately clutch pearls if you would go and say the F word in front of her. So in that regard, I'm just going to put her right over here. So she would be like, she never said it and she refuses to say it, and she would scold anyone who would go and say it. Next up we have over here is Miss Mousy. Oh, Miss Mousy honestly is a very interesting case because like I remember like way back in the beginning of the Muppets, even in one of the pilots, they tried to make Miss Mousy as like a love interest, that she would be the kind of Muppet that some of the other Muppets would fall in love for. In fact, fun fact, before Miss Piggy, there was a moment where Kermit was actually in love with Miss Mousy, especially for the Valentine special. But when it comes to Miss Mousy though, I don't think she would be the kind that would swear. She's almost like Annie Sue, where she has more of a squeaky clean image. So in that regard, I'm just going to put her at the bottom. I think it would make sense. Oh, but next up, we got the Muppets. Considering they're supposed to be like the nastier version of the Muppets, I think like, yeah, this is one of the easiest ones to just put at the top. Like the Muppets would immediately go and regularly say it. Considering they're supposed to be the antithesis of the Muppets, like they would be the kind that even in their opening act or in whatever scenario, they would go and just drop the F-bomb like it's no one's like it's no problem. Next up we got Mulch, and Mulch, I gotta say, is a very interesting Muppet here because when it comes to Mulch, I feel like he would be the kind that he would not say it, and like maybe he would try to say it, but he would be scolded by whoever he would work for. Because in case you don't know Mulch, originally he was built as a Muppet that's supposed to be like a parody of Quasimodo, but then later on the Muppets would keep on using him as like an assistant that in case they need help and it has a bit of a Halloween theme, then they would go and use Mulch. Like he is Dr. Van Neuter's assistant, and he also he also made an appearance in Muppets Haunted Mansion. So in that regard, honestly, I feel like even if he would want to say it, he cannot say it because then he would be punished. So I'm just gonna put him right over here because like he probably has learned that he cannot say it because then he would be put in his place, you know? Anyways, next up, we got the fruits and vegetables, the living food of the Muppets. And honestly, this might be surprising, but I'm immediately putting them right at the top. They would go and say the F word. Yes, they would go and sing and dance regularly, but let's be honest, when the Swedish chef is involved, they know that they are screwed. They know that their life, their purpose in life is to be eaten, which they're probably not fond of. Honestly, like, even though they are the Muppets, I feel like if you give them permission to go and say the F word, we would go and see a puppet recreation of Sausage Party. Yes, I know technically some would say that the Muppet version of Sausage Party is called Happy Time Murders, but let's be honest, we don't talk about that movie. Next up, we got the Muppets news reporter. And honestly, I feel like he would be more of a similar case to Gonzo, where maybe the dude himself would not go and swear, especially if he has to go and put up a professional image. But considering the events whenever they would go massively wrong, I feel like, yeah, there would be times where like he would say it out of panic. So in that regard, I'll put him in the middle, where like he never said it before, but like he probably, like, if he can, he would. Next up, we got Nigel, who is the conductor of the Muppets Orchestra, and he was originally the host before Kermit the Frog in one of the pilots, specifically Sex and Violence. But the only problem is that Nigel is just too bland of a character. He's just too boring. He's so uninteresting. And in that regard, considering that he's just, considering that he is Kermit, but with none of the personality, I think I'm just going to put him right in the middle. Like, he has like a squeaky clean image that people just do not care for. I would say like he's comparable to like Bill, like he has like that kind of image where like he's so safe that no one gives a crap about him. Next up, we got, wait, didn't I already do you? Hold on, let me just double check. Like, why are you next to Nigel? Just want to... Oh, Schnut, it is a different character. Oh, and coincidentally, he's also called Nigel. Okay, so, this isn't Droop. This is actually Nigel. This is actually a different Muppet, where in Muppets Tonight, he is the TV director, but he cannot control his cool compared to Kermit. Like, this is the kind of character that would continuously panic. So in that regard, I feel like, considering that he's not as calm and collected as Kermit, he would go and regularly say it because he cannot handle the Muppet chaos as much as Kermit. Next up, okay, we got an interesting trio. So these are all pirates. So I think it's safe to say that they would go and be right at the top. So we got Old Tom, yeah, definitely would say it. Real Old Tom, definitely would say it. Dead Tom, okay, I would say amongst all the pirates here, Dead Tom is the one who cannot say it. He's the only pirate whom I would put at the bottom who legally cannot say the F word because he is dead. He literally cannot say anything. So in that regard, he would have to be at the bottom. There are no words that could ever come out of Dead Tom's mouth because Dead Tom is dead. And actually, speaking of characters that legally cannot say F, we also got the Penguins. I'm not 100% sure if there are moments where the Penguins actually said words, like maybe in musical numbers where they would sing, but normally when you would see penguins, all they do is just do the whack, 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 whack. So in that regard, yeah, they're at the bottom as well. They legally cannot say it. Oh, but then you got Pepe the King Prawn. And I would put him in the same category as the Rats. He would be one of those that is definitely most likely to go and say the F word. But the funny thing about Pepe is that I feel like he is the kind who would say the F word, not out of anger, but just because it's his personality. He would be the kind that, like, in every sentence he would say, he would drop at least one F-bomb. And, he would just do it so casually. He would just, he would be cool with it. He would be the kind that, like, he's rare. It's rare for him to exclaim the F word out of, like, anger or something, or out of shock or anything like that. Like, he doesn't push out the F word. He would just let it flow naturally. So yeah, definitely would be on top. oh my god, the regularly said F list, like, it's getting bigger and bigger. But anyways, next up that we have is Polly. And Polly, well, considering that he is a short-tempered pirate, easy to say he would go and immediately be right at the top. Next up, we got Mr. Poodle Pants. This guy is among the lesser-known Muppets that showed up in Muppets Tonight. And the thing that you got to know about him is that he's kind of like the embodiment of silliness. Like, he is the best way to describe him is that he looks exactly like what you would think of when someone does an Ed Wynn impression. In fact, the way he speaks is actually the silly Ed Wynn impression. You know, he actually does speak like that and always feels silly all the time.
Here I am. Oh, I'm sorry I'm late there, Mr. Eagle. You know, the twirly-woo trolley stopped me at Checkpoint Chuckle because I didn't have my 90/90 passport.
You know, he's that kind of guy. So in that regard, honestly, I would feel like, considering that the silly factor, like, it would not include saying the F word, I would, you know, maybe some people might disagree with me on this, but I would put him over here. Because, like, saying the F word is not necessarily a silly thing. And when you would do an Ed Wynn impression, it just feels out of place if you would go and drop an F-bomb. Like, try it for yourself. Like, do an impression of Ed Wynn, you know, like, be the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland, and say the F word. It doesn't feel right, you know? Next up, we got Pops, another senior Muppet. So in that regard, honestly, I don't think he would go and swear, or he would want to hear swear words. So honestly, I will just put him over here, that he would refuse to say it. I think that makes sense. Next up, we got Rizzo. Ah, yes, the Muppets signature rat. And one that it has been quite a long time since we have seen appearances from him. Honestly, there's a part of me that does miss Rizzo, especially as someone who grew up with Muppets Christmas Carol, and especially with the Muppets throughout the 90s and the 2000s. Honestly, I do wish that we could have more Rizzo. But then again, like in terms of like the history of the Muppets, we do know why Rizzo is not often used, but that's a completely different story altogether. But when it comes to Rizzo himself, yeah, considering he is a Muppet rat, much like Pepe, like, he would just swear regularly, so easily right at the top, no problem. Next up, we got Kermit's nephew, Robin. And considering that Robin is a little boy, I think honestly, he legally cannot say it. Like, it would not be impossible for him to say it, but if he does, then oh my god, he would be in serious trouble. Like, he's too innocent for that word. So honestly, he legally cannot say it. We must maintain Robin's innocent image, so he has to be right at the bottom where he legally cannot say it. And we have to make sure no one makes him say it whatsoever. Next up, we got Rolf the dog. And honestly, with Rolf, I feel like I would put him in the middle. Like, he's the kind of guy that maybe he has said it in the past, and maybe it wouldn't be too out of place for him to actually say the word, but he's not necessarily the kind of dog that would go and say it. Like, he's a lot more chillaxed, you know? He's a lot like Bobo in a way. You know, he's a little too calm for that word. He's not the kind that would just go and like blare it out. So I'm just putting him right in the middle. I think it's a safe bet right there. And then we got Sam the Eagle. And when it comes to Sam, I feel like, honestly, he would be the kind that, while not old, he would be massively offended if you would say the F word. Like he would be the kind that if you would go and suddenly drop a random F-bomb for whatever reason, then Sam would go and lecture you about why saying the F word is so unpatriotic, why it's so un-American. So easily he would be right over here, that he would refuse to say it because saying the F word is un-American. And then we got Scooter. And Scooter, I feel like he would be in the same place as Sam, but for entirely different reasons. Like, this dude has way too much of a squeaky clean image. Like, he's the kind of guy that he would totally be, especially like from what we've seen in the 2015 Muppets, he's way too much of a mama's boy, that he would be the kind that, you know, he would feel a bit scandalized if someone would go and swear in front of him. Like, you know, he would be the kind that would be like, oh my god, you said a no-no word. So honestly, I would just put him over here easily. Next up, we have Seymour, in which he only appeared in Muppets Tonight, but believe it or not, there was a once upon a time where Pepe the King Prawn was part of a duo with Seymour and Pepe, and Seymour was the elephant that was next to Pepe. Unfortunately, he did not get the same amount of fame as Pepe. But when it comes to Seymour, I feel like honestly, he is way less likely to go and say it, to say the F word. I would say, like, at the most, if he would say it, it would be because of the influence of Pepe. So I would put him right in the middle, that he has never said it before, but chances are if he hangs out with Pepe long enough, then yeah, he'll probably drop it at some point. Next up, we got Sal, who is Johnny Fiamma's chimpanzee assistant. And the thing with Sal is that he takes his job very seriously as the personal assistant and to really glorify the fame of Johnny Fiamma. So he would absolutely be the kind that would throw swear words. He would keep on saying the F word in order to make sure that Johnny Fiamma gets his way. So yeah, he would definitely go and regularly say it. All right, next up, oh my God. Ryan, are you freaking serious? You add her? Oh my God. So in case you don't know, Ryan actually added Spamela Henderson. And oh my God, I'm sorry. Like, as much as I do love Miss Piggy, she would be the one pig I would take over. I would definitely take over Miss Piggy. Like, if we're gonna go and rank pigs right now, I would say Denise, Annie Sue, Miss Piggy, Spamela. And I am a stupid guy, and there are two major reasons as to why I would go with Spamela Henderson.
She's beautiful, she's rich, she's got huge tracts of land.
Okay, but in all seriousness though, the thing with Spamela is that she is a gender-bent link hogthrob. She is a legitimate bimbo where she just doesn't necessarily know any better. Even if you say the F word in front of her, she may not necessarily know what that means. So honestly, if she would say it, she doesn't know any better, and I can guarantee you, straight guys, including myself, would not hold her accountable for it. So in that regard, she would be right in the middle with the other dumb Muppets. But I would most certainly go out with her, no problem, no questions asked. All right, but anyways, the next ones we got are actually very interesting because now we got Statler and Waldorf. Now, I know as much as I would say that when it comes to the older Muppets or the senior Muppets, they would go immediately at the, like, near bottom where they would refuse to say it. But when it comes to Statler and Waldorf, I feel like they are the most likely in terms of the senior Muppets who would go and actually swear. So in that regard, honestly, I don't think they would go and regularly swear it, but considering their rounds of riffing and heckling and stuff like that, they have probably dropped the F-bomb before. So honestly, I would put them right over here, that they've probably sworn off from saying it because of their age, but them saying the F word is not impossible. And then next up, we got the Swedish chef, whom I would say maybe he would say the F word, but considering that he speaks in mock Swedish, no one would ever know. It's pretty much the same thing like Lips or Beaker or Camilla. So honestly, he just legally cannot say it because I don't think the F word is part of the mock Swedish vocabulary. I just don't think it's there. Next up, we have Sweetums. Sweetums, I feel like, I don't know. Like, maybe he would go and say it, but it's hard to really imagine that he would do so. So honestly, with Sweetums, I feel like he would be in the middle. I don't think he would be the kind of Muppet that would say it, but again, considering he is this giant monster, it would not be impossible for him to say it. And the next up we got here is Thog. And Thog, he's actually an interesting case because as much as he is a giant monster, I feel like out of all the giant monsters in the Muppets, he is the least likely to go and say the F word. He would be the least likely to drop the F-bomb because he has a more gentle and sweeter personality. So in that regard, I'm putting it right over here that he would not actually go and say it. Maybe he's familiar with it, but he's just not the kind of guy that would ever do so. Next up, oh my god, we got Uncle Deadly. Now, this is one I gotta say, it's so fascinating to see Uncle Deadly's history, where he would just rise up in the ranks of the Muppets, where nowadays, he's kind of like one of the regular members. And I feel like he definitely does deserve it. He definitely is such an interesting character, especially with how they have used him nowadays as Miss Piggy's flamboyant assistant. And I think in that regard, I feel like the more that we see Uncle Deadly, the more that he is prominently used, the more that I feel like, honestly, yeah, he would most likely drop the F-bomb, especially if he would hang out with Miss Piggy and be her assistant. Honestly, like, yeah, it would become more and more likely. But in terms of himself, I think, honestly, I would put him, like, not regularly saying it, but he probably would say it at some points. Like, he would not swear as often as either Pepe or Animal and Miss Piggy, but he would definitely do so. And then next up, we got Waldo, or as I like to remember him, Waldo, the spirit of 3D. And in that regard, honestly, I think that's another one where he would be right in the middle. You know, honestly, it's not impossible for him to say it, but with the kind of personality that he has, it's less likely than it is that he would go and say it. So I'm just, you know, like, considering he is kind of like this digital ball of chaos, I would just put him right in the middle. I think that's the safest bet. Next up, we got my boy Walter. And I think with Walter, considering that his personality is mainly to be like a Muppet fanboy, I don't think he would be the kind that would legitimately swear. I think, like, he is less likely to swear than Rolf, Gonzo, and some of the dumber pigs. So in that regard, I think, like, he would be the kind that would refuse to say it. Like, not entirely like Scooter, but he would be the kind that would definitely swear off from saying the F word. Next up, we have Wayne and Wanda. Okay, here's the interesting thing. Wayne and Wanda, I feel like I know for a fact that they would drop F-bombs. I know that they would swear, but only on stage. Because the thing is, like, every time they would go and perform an act, they would suck. There's always something that would happen that would be a massive disaster. And in that regard, that's when they would go and drop the F-bomb. But on their own, honestly, I don't think they would. So I'm just going to put them over here where they have definitely said it, but I don't think themselves would go and say it. Next up, we have Yolanda. And Yolanda, honestly, well, I mean, she is a rat. So yeah, I think it is going to be a safe bet that she would be right over here. I think for sure, like, she would swear as much as, like, the other rats like Rizzo. And then last but not least, we have Zoot. And with Zoot, honestly, well, I mean, he is a member of the Electric Mayhem, but considering that he doesn't talk as much as the other members like Dr. Teeth or Floyd or Animal, I think, honestly, he would probably say the F word as much as Janice. So I'm going to put him in the middle as well. And that should be it for our list. And I gotta say, it's honestly pretty surprising that there are way more Muppets that are likely to say the F word than not, because so far it's only the ones who would regularly say it, that has like 3 layers of characters, where most of them would just have 2, and the ones who legally cannot say it only has like 1 tier. So honestly, it is a very fascinating list, and it is very interesting to go and analyze each of these Muppets to know where they would go and belong. But I would say this is honestly just absolutely fun to go and create, and hopefully you also had a great time. So if you enjoyed this list, then let me know. If you want to see me do more of these lists where I would go and determine which characters would most likely say the F word, then write it down in the comments below. And also don't forget to go and give this a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't, because you never know what crazy videos I will go and put up next. And with all that said and done, I would just like to say thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see you later, dudes.